My name is Julene Jackson. Welcome to Moms for America, our virtual cottage meeting, lesson number 8, Capture the Sunshine. We are so glad to have you with us today as we talk about how we can bring beauty into the lives of those we love the most. Beauty in the forms of music, literature, stories, art. We are on lesson number 8. We've had 7 wonderful lessons. The first one starting in how do we remain anchored in hope in a world that is looking increasingly unhopeful. And we talked about how we look to God. We make family or quality time. We study the Constitution from the viewpoint of the Founding Fathers, and we look to moral and virtuous leaders. We talked about the pillars of liberty, the foundation of faith, valor of virtue, the power of patriotism, the power of telling stories. And today we're going to talk about how we can help our family capture the sunshine in their life so we can help foster this love of liberty and hope for our nation. So these cottage meetings are women coming together around the country. Now, normally moms would come together in neighborhoods for about an hour to 2 hours. Our virtual meetings are usually about an hour. Sometimes in-home cottage meetings go a little bit longer. This, our manual here that we've been using for a cottage meeting, the Cottage Meeting Resource Manual, is such a great guide. This is where the lessons come from. You can purchase the manual on Amazon or also on our momsforamerica.us website. But these pockets of liberty, these cottage meetings are all around the country. Because of the pandemic, we've gone virtual. It's been so much fun. We always, before we begin a cottage meeting in the home, someone would offer a little prayer and we would pledge just to invite the Spirit of God to be with us as we're trying to learn and teach and share and come up with ideas and ways in which we can shore up the 4 walls of our home, our children, our grandchildren. So let's just go ahead today and offer a little prayer. We've asked Lisa Cummings from Texas to offer a prayer, and then she will lead us in the pledge, and then we'll get started with our lesson. Lisa.
Our Father in heaven, we humbly come before thee this morning, grateful to gather together as women under the supporting our nation and our leadership in this times of trials. We pray that thy Spirit be upon us, on our homes, and protecting us and our children as we learn to emulate thee and to expound on the freedoms of liberty that thou hast given us. We pray for thy protections and blessings, and we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, we could all stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lisa, thank you so much. Lisa is a part of our dream team here at Moms for America. Lisa, can you just introduce yourself for a moment? I think this is your first time participating on the webinar for a cottage meeting.
Yes. So I am Lisa Cummins. I live in Texas. I've been here for a year. I was formerly on the Utah State School Board, and before that I was a founding member of the Utahns Against Common Core, and I've been politically active for the last 10 years, involved in education and other issues, pro-life, gun rights and things like that. I have 5 children, 3 of which have moved out, and I have 2 remaining. I've homeschooled for 10 years and have had experience in the charter, public, and homeschool communities, so I have a vast amount of wealth at that. And I love studying issues. I love the founders. I love America. I'm originally from Canada, so I've gone through the naturalization system and was quite appalled on what it took for our students to know what being a citizen was. It's basically what third world citizens go through to become naturalized. And it was quite embarrassing, if in fact. And so I've dedicated, you see much of my library to American history, to world history, and to vast amounts of knowledge that my children and my, whoever I can influence has more vast knowledge and can research the truth. So that's what I do.
Woo! You are busy. Thank you so much. A mom of 5, 2 left at home. So for Moms for America, I know you write for our magazine, and you also are the director of education for Moms for America.
I am director of education policy and content. So I have fingers in I don't know how many pies. I've stopped counting. And yeah, so very busy and full of knowledge. And so just give me a moment to download that file. If there's ever a question, I can pull up an answer or find that answer for you. So
thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
You're welcome.
And so we've got Jessica, mother of 2, living in upstate New York, a 11-year-old and a 9-year-old daughter, 11-year-old son, 9-year-old daughter. And then we've got Vivian in Texas. Lisa and Vivian are about 4 hours away in Texas. And Vivian is a mama of 2, a 30-year-old millennial. Millennials who have all the answers. They've got all the answers and no experience is what I say. I have 3 millennials. I have 5 children. 3 of them are millennials. So I always think it's cute how they have always come to me with such wisdom, but no experience sometimes to back up their wisdom. But that's okay. We need our millennials. They're the hope of our future, so we can't give up on them. And then Kimberly Fletcher. Kimberly is back from an extended adventure vacation / hospital stay. We haven't really mentioned it, but Kimberly is our fearless leader, founder of Moms for America. How are you doing, honey?
I am doing pretty darn good. For what happened to me afterwards, I had the best care and the best possible scenario. So I have a nice metal plate in my collarbone now to hold it together. So when I go through the airport, I beep. That was fun coming home. But I'm doing really well on to mending fully, and I missed everybody, and I apologize for falling short on numerous things, and just know that I love y'all, and nothing that I have said or done over the course of the last 2 weeks has been intentional to hurt anybody. I've just been trying to barely survive, but I'm back. I'm alive, so we're doing good.
Well, you look beautiful. You would never know you had a few weeks stay in the hospital, just home yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you're feeling the prayers of all of us on your behalf, sweetheart, because we need you in this great work, and we're so glad, honestly, to have you back.
I definitely felt them, and I really appreciated all of you. I cannot even tell you how much I appreciated the prayers and the support during all of this. Thank you so much.
It is beautiful to have a band of sisterhood to kind of rally around. I know your family and all your loved ones did, but when we heard the word that you had this accident on a family reunion of sorts, I immediately got on my knees, and I know so many of you did as well. And the power of prayer is real, and I hope you felt it, because we were praying for your sister. So anyway, so we've got a gal, Sandy Galvin, is also joining us today. Welcome, Sandy. I'm not sure if you can speak to us, but we're so glad to have you here. Okay, so let's get going. We know last week we told some wonderful stories and how the power of storytelling really educates the heart, and it's what inspires our thoughts and helps us to take action. And today we're talking about capturing the sunshine. Now that's an interesting subject. You know, I had a mama who was always pointing out, she was a mother of 9, and we were kind of really poor. So we weren't able to go and do a lot of things, but like the front yard was like her movie theater. She was always pointing out the sunset or the sunrise or the changing leaves in the mountains or the lilac bushes. I'll never forget her always saying every spring, that great poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, if spring came but once a century instead of once a year, or burst forth with the sound of the earthquake and not silence, what wonder and expectation there would be in all the hearts to behold this miraculous change. I didn't even realize she was quoting poetry when she would say that to us year after year, but it was poetry. And we knew that she knew that God's handiwork was some of the greatest beauty. And that's exactly the quote on page 137. So we'll open up our books to page 137. Lesson number 8, Capture the Sunshine. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great quote, says, never lose an opportunity of seeing anything beautiful, for beauty is God's handwriting. And our purpose today in this lesson is to introduce the need for sunshine in all of our lives. Just as a plant needs sunshine to grow healthy and strong, we need beauty in our lives as well. Beauty in music, literature, to nurture the growth of liberty within the hearts of people, and also why expressions of gratitude and recordings of inspiration are essential to capturing this sunshine in our life. Now, capture is really an action verb, so it suggests that we kind of need to reach outside of ourselves to find this light in our environment and in our world, in our homes. And girls, I think we all can agree we need some light and some hope and beauty in our nation, in our world at this time. So let's get started. Let's turn the page to 138 and 139 in our Cottage Meeting Manual. Now, always before we begin, there's a page of presentation resources, and these are books that they would recommend we read that are kind of on part of the subject that we're talking about today. And I always recommend going on Amazon or going to our website and purchasing one of these books, because we're building our library of freedom, and you want bookshelves in your homes with these great books, so you never need to wonder, oh, what should I read, or what should I read a grandchild, or what should I recommend for my teenager to read. You'll just have these shelves of books that are of beautiful quality and have been vetted. And so here are some recommendations, and we're actually going to talk about Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, today in some of our supplemental material. So let's turn the page to 140 of our Cottage Meeting Manual. Now remember, I have a lot of books on freedom through the years. I have 5 kids. 2 are left at home. 3 are out in the world now. And I have a lot of books, but this is one of the most valuable resources I've used through the years, because it compiles great quotes, scripture, stories, video recommendations, book recommendations. And so it's just an all-encompassing, all-in-one resource guide to have. I would hold it on my little lap in my pajamas early in the morning when I would teach little devotionals to our children and teenagers and read out of this book. So I can't recommend this resource highly. I can't recommend it enough. So let's turn to page 140, and in the middle of the page, we're going to talk about how we can nourish the heart towards a love of liberty. Welcome, ladies, all those that are joining us. Cute little Jacqueline. Hello. Picture of her doggy. So anyways, it refers us to this book, Making Good Use of the Harvest. The book is Raising the Next Generation of Patriots. So let's turn to page 60 of this book. I really like this chapter in raising a new generation of patriots. And Kimberly, you were a part of writing this book along with Marlene Peterson and Tammy Holtz. It's just a small little book. Once again, you can get it on our website, momsforamerica.us, or on Amazon as well. You can have it within a day or two. And I have this book all marked up. It is the most wonderful little book full of beautiful stories and ideas and encouragement for mamas and grandmoms. So if you turn to page 60 of this book, it says, a free people are always blessed with great prosperity. And so one more task remains for gardeners of liberty. That's teaching and preparing children to make good use of their harvest so that we don't have any rotten tomatoes on the patio. Materialism, it talks about, has kind of taken over our garden of liberty. And we're seeing this as really the culminating event of a year's hard labor is the big sales on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Even our education system is on making a living rather than making a life. I'll never forget one year, it was in August, I wrote in the notes here, my little baby, my youngest girl who's 12, was making her Christmas list in August. And I'm thinking, where did I go wrong? But I love the quote by John Adams, how he says he had a different ideal in mind. I must study politics on page 61, study politics and war that my sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy and geography and natural history and architecture and navigation and commerce and agriculture in order to give their children a right to study painting and poetry and music and architecture, tapestry, statuary, and porcelain. Although our stuff does make us comfortable, we have the enviable opportunity to even climb to higher places than just our stuff. I love the fairy tale in the book on the bottom of page 61, Sleeping Beauty, and it talks about these fairy tales and how they've lasted for hundreds of years because they contain these kernels of truth that transcend our stuff. It talks about Sleeping Beauty in Disney's film adaptation in the story, how the entire kingdom became lifeless and colorless when Beauty fell asleep, and how there were weeds and thorns that grew up around the sleeping kingdom. And then Prince Philip valiantly drew his sword of truth, protected himself with the shield of righteousness, and fought his way through that tangled mess to bring the kingdom back to life. And the thing that brought the kingdom back to life, that thing was his love for beauty. And when Beauty received true love's first kiss, Beauty awoke and the kingdom gloriously sprang back to life. Now, the lessons you could teach your children just through reading them back. What is beauty today? Why does our country look the way it does? Have we lost this love of beauty? The love of beauty falls on this generation of mothers and grandmothers. You know, we can have great works of art right in our home. We can have beautiful symphonies playing. We can have beautiful literature, and it's just maybe a click away on our computer. You know, if we turn to page 66 and 67, and we're going to talk about Viktor Frankl all throughout our lesson today, but Viktor Frankl, who lived for 3 to 4 years in a Nazi concentration camp, studied what caused some people just to crumble and other people to find a real purpose, even in the most dire circumstances. And you talked about how these little prisoners would gather at night to recite poems and sing songs and to improvise little plays. And these became the jewels of their life. And sometimes they'd even skip their meals so they would have more time to participate. That art and beauty became the soul's weapon in the fight for self-preservation. So I think it's interesting on page 67, and then I'm going to ask you a question in just a moment. At the top of page 67, it says, when an individual or nation lacks in beauty and those qualities we term inspirational, it becomes devoid of humanity, love, and self-respect, and selfishness and violence fills in the void. Isn't that interesting? Might that be some of the problems that we're seeing right now as young people? Their source of entertainment is to go and destroy and to burn and to be violent. And it makes me wonder if they had a real foundation of beauty, of the arts, they wouldn't want to tear down parks or statues or to destroy beautiful buildings. It will be a challenge, it says in 67, for many of us in our generation to awaken something in the hearts of the children that may even be asleep within us because of the world we have grown up in. An appreciation of beauty is emotional. It's a matter of the heart, not the facts and the information and the secular and scientific critical thinking that we've all gotten so good at. And so I love this last little story of Helen Keller on page 68. So these are all little stories and vignettes you could talk to a child with over breakfast or in the evening at dinner. But I love Helen Keller, who was blind and deaf, and she taught us about seeing. She said she had a dear friend, who went for a long walk in the woods. And when the friend came back, she asked her friend, "What did you see?" And the friend said, I didn't really see anything in particular. And Helen said, "Why is it that the seeing sees so little?" She said, "If I went for a walk for an hour through the woods, I would find 100 things to interest me: the delicate feel of a leaf, the smooth skin of a silver birch, the shaggy bark of a pine. In the springtime, I would search possibly for little buds, the first awakening of nature. Yet those," she said on page 70, "who have eyes apparently see so little. It is human, perhaps, to appreciate little that which we have and to long for that which we have not." So, mothers, it is up to us, mothers and grandmothers, to help our children see. Do our walls have inspirational art, or does it just match the couch? I used to think that too. There came a point in my life where I thought, I don't want trinkets that don't have a meaning in my house. I want everything to have some sort of meaning. So is our literature empty, or is it says here, is our literature, instead of empty words written merely to entertain, what kind of literature do we have? Which is interesting. What do we have out for our children? Is that mindless magazines, or is it meaningful stuff? So nurturing our children's desire for love and the love of beauty in all of its expressions is truly a restorative power. Every effort to connect our children with that which is beautiful is some of the most important gardening work that we will do. So, dear mamas, what are we doing to promote beauty in the life of our family right now? What are some examples that you have of promoting beauty in the life of your home right now, to give your children something to be hopeful about versus what they might just be seeing in the newspaper or on social media? What did your mother do? What did you see your grandmother do? What are you doing to promote beauty in the life of your family, children, grandchildren?
I have in our home, everywhere where we move, I have a specific place that I have to place two things. I know I've talked about George before, but we have the portrait of George Washington's prayer at Valley Forge, where he's kneeling with his horse. Beautiful, beautiful painting. It was actually a gift from my husband on our 25th anniversary, and it was one of the best anniversary gifts I've ever received. And every time we move, I have to identify the place for that. And the second is a picture of Jesus Christ, where it's literally like he's just looking at you and saying, "You've got this." I mean, it's the most incredible painting of him. And so every time we move, in the military we move a lot, it's like, where are those two things going to be? And I always want to place in several of our homes, the first thing you saw when you came in the door was Jesus welcoming you in. And in our home now, it was very difficult to find a place for that. So now as the children walk down the stairs, when they're walking out the door to face the day, what they see is Jesus at the top of those stairs as they're coming down. "You've got this. Remember who you are." And in our family room, it's like George has always been above the fireplace. So we're sitting there reading stories of America, but they see these pictures, they see these paintings. And then a few years ago, we added a collection to the Moms for America store of two paintings. One is a mother in a garden with a flag surrounded by her children, mending the torn flag. And I've talked a lot to my children about, what does that mean? What is she doing? You know, it's us that's holding it together. And the second one is a picture of you see Jesus's hands and you know, his arms holding the flag with a bunch of children around him. And I asked them, you know, what does that mean to you? And so we have these discussions when they see it. So we talk about it, and then they see them through the house every day. And I think it gives them that, it makes me feel warm and fuzzy, so I hope it makes them feel warm and fuzzy. But my children have always told me that when they come home, they feel like they're home. And that's what I want. I think when you create this environment, it makes them feel, not just be, but they feel like they're part of something important.
And don't you know, Jesus and George Washington have been real foundational and grounding to those children in that home, that ever presence, Jesus and George. I love that. What else, mothers, are you doing to promote beauty within your home?
I would say kind of on a more basic level. To me, I grew up, my mom, she was big into gardening. She's talented with, oh wait, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. She's talented with like floral arranging and table setting, and she grew up on a farm. So, you know, when I was a child, that was like the one thing she did, because she worked full time and she didn't keep herself super busy, but that was the one thing, was being a part of the garden club. And so she always, you know, would bring in flowers. We would have the way she would set the table, and still to this day. So it's something that I do as well. I mean, I'm not as talented as she is, but I feel for me, it creates like peace in the home. And just to, also with noticing creation in nature, like you said, Julie, and I do the same thing with my kids, always pointing out, you know, the butterflies or the bunnies, the sunset, just the way a leaf, the details of a leaf, or a caterpillar. Just ever since they were little kids, I was always trying to let them see, you know, the detail and the beauty of everything that's created from big to small on earth. So
I love that. That reminds me, my mama would, the cherry blossoms, she would just snip them in the yard and put them in a vase. And that was our flower arrangement with the cherry blossoms. Or when the changing leaves, she'd go up in the mountains and bring big bunches of colored leaves home and put them in a vase. Yeah, beautiful. Anyone else?
I've been remodeling my home, and my kids think I have lost my mind because I put everything patriotic downstairs. And so like in my dining room, I have this big giant picture of Abraham Lincoln at the Lincoln Memorial. So they're like, Mom, I think you got a little overboard. But I think it, you know, coming to these meetings every week, it's just made it so clear to me that I do need to surround my family with these things. And I too love to garden. So I think it's important, you know, when you bring in fresh flowers from your, you know, it just makes for a more tranquil and peaceful. And I notice when I do that too, my kitchen table stays much cleaner. I don't know if you guys ever notice that, but when I got that beautiful vase of flowers, it's like my table stays clean. So I don't know, but I think it is really important what you put around the books that you lay out for your family and your children. And yeah, we all need a little more beauty in our lives, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think we also need to include music in the media that our children see. You know, with these streaming outsources of what they get to pick is in front of our children. I think we need to be more intentional about what we want to have our children be exposed to. Like we've promoted Liberty Kids before, you know, buy the series. Little House on the Prairie, buy this series if you can. You know, it teaches good moral values, family, tradition, things like that. They need to see that there's goodness. You know, you're fortifying your homes through this, right? So that when the kids are outside in the world, that they are, that they know the difference, that they see the difference, right? And that when they come home, they're safe, they're secure, there's happiness, there's, you know, games. You know, how many times do you get around the table now and play games with your family and your children? I think this is probably one of the rare opportunities throughout the shutdown is what we've been able to build with our family, that relationship, the communication skills, the interpersonal relationships, one-on-one with their children. So there's not a peer-on-peer education, but there's a parent-on-children education, if you will. And so anything bright and light fortifying our homes, you know, is a stark contrast to what's being shared outside.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love, those are great ideas. And you're right. I have a home where we are always playing classical music. And it's so interesting that I know some of my friends' kids like to just blare their music. But when there's always classical music in the home, I find that that's never been an issue with me, kids playing inappropriate music, because from the very beginning, when they were little, there was always classical music that just kind of calms the home and sets the tone for a peaceful atmosphere. So, you know, in the past, there's wonderful packages you can get through the symphony and the ballet and, you know, theater for family passes. And there's also free things in the community. Now, we haven't been able to do that the last 6 months. We're praying that we can get back to that. But even wonderful movies that you can stream. We just finished watching with all of our children, The Chosen. Have you heard of that one? Kind of the life of Christ. And it was the first season was 8 episodes. So I promise you, you will be so inspired. They're about 50 minutes each episode, and they're just current, fresh. And the way they depict Jesus Christ, and they're hoping to get enough money. I think they've almost got enough money to complete their second season. But it just made all of us just want to be better, to be like Jesus. And, you know, there's been a lot of stories about the life of Jesus. This is nothing like I've ever seen before, mothers. I can't give a high enough recommendation. Has anyone seen The Chosen? These 8 series? Oh, okay. Google it. You can't get it on Prime or Netflix. I think it's through an app. You download the Chosen app and then you hook it up to VidAngel or something. It's really not that complicated, but it's beautiful viewing, and I promise that you'll be edified. In your children, all ages, my teenager, my young. We just watched a little clip on Sunday for our home church, and my 25-year-old and 22-year-old were so inspired by it, and they've watched it on their own, but we watched it again. So anyways, okay, so the 5,000-year leap. Now, you know, you've heard us talk about the 5,000-year leap. There's 28 principles that our founding fathers used to form this nation and to write these sacred documents. So it encourages us on the page of 140 of our Cottage Meeting Manual to read the preface and to study principle number 9. And the preface of this book talks about how our founders revered the Constitution and really looked at it as a thing of beauty. And Thomas Jefferson in the preface says, "May you and your contemporaries preserve inviolate the Constitution, which, cherished in all of its chastity and purity, will prove in the end a blessing to the nations of the earth." And it is clear here that he, along with all the other founders, thought that this inspired document was a thing of beauty, that it was indeed struck off by the hand of God. And principle 9 in the 5,000-year leap. Remember, you can get these little bookmarks, and on the back it has the 28 principles. And if you memorize those 28 principles, you will be powerful when you're talking about the rule of law and principles of liberty and freedom, and you will be able to refute arguments of emotion with arguments of truth upon which our founders, gave us this nation. So I'd recommend doing that if you can. So anyways, that principle 9 talks about 8 and 9, these inalienable rights that God gave us, these God-given rights. And to protect those rights, God has revealed certain law within divine law. These principles are contained in divine law. So our founding fathers knew that these sound principles of law were based in the Bible, in God's law, and that being true to his law would qualify us for his protection and for his blessing, and also inspire us and give us gratitude for what God has done for us in this land that we live in. So also at the bottom of page 140, it recommends that we go to some little vignettes here. This is called Promises of the Constitution. So the 3 books that I have shown you, the 5,000-Year Leap, the Raising a Generation of Patriots, and the Promises of the Constitution are kind of core textbooks that we use along with our Cottage Meeting Manual. And these vignettes are only a little page and a half, and they give us little windows to American history. And this vignette on 2.5 talks about the early life of the Puritans and how we think of them as kind of dour and morose people. But it tells of really the humor and the laughter, and the music in their church services tells a little bit about of the beauty that they found in their church services. And then vignette 312 talks about a father and a son who actually rang the bell on the day that the Liberty Bell, on the day the Declaration of Independence was signed. And then there's a beautiful poem in there. I don't know if you've had the chance to take your children to Independence Hall. Right outside of Independence Hall is where the Liberty Bell is held. And really it stands as such a testament to the love of liberty that really burns in the hearts of patriots. And so these are all beautiful things and ideas, and these vignettes are great. They teach a little bit about the beauty of some of these monuments and relics that are around the country. So let's turn, if we can get the next slide on the scriptures, Vivian. On the page of 141, I believe, I just can't see that, page 141, it gives us some wonderful scriptures, and it talks about how the spirit of gratitude has been known to lift people during times of depression and discouragement, and how it helps us to acknowledge God's hand in our life when we can turn to the Word. And also talks a little bit about music, how music can lift our spirits. So if you just look there at the James 1 scripture, how it acknowledges every good gift comes from God. And then we know the parable of the lepers, how only one returned when 10 had been healed. One returned and fell on the feet of Jesus in gratitude. And then James 5:13 through verse 15 and Acts 16 and Psalms 10 or 100 talk about praying or music. If afflicted, in James 5, if afflicted, pray. If you're merry, sing. In Acts 16, it talks about Paul and Silas. They were in jail. They were being beaten. It was midnight, and they began to sing. And other prisoners heard these songs and how it must have lifted their hearts. And Psalms 100 talks about making a joyful noise unto the Lord. Come before him in his presence with singing. So how has music helped lift your spirits during times of challenges? How are you using music now, right now? Has music had any impact in your home? What kind of music do you listen to? And how has it brought the spirit of liberty, of beauty, of God in your life? Anyone have examples?
You know, in our home, when you're talking about the classical music, I immediately thought of my son Jordan. Every one of my children has their own interesting, eclectic taste in music, because we when we have our, when we clean the house, we have our cleaning the house music. When you have all these different things, and there are some of my favorites, and they know the song that it's my husband and I, our song, and every time they play it, they look at us to see, are we going to dance? And it's just music just really sets an amazing environment. But we also, during school, when we started homeschooling, somebody told me that if you have classical music in the background, it helps your children stay focused and they do better in math. So the whole entire time we were doing school, we would have this classical music playing in the background. Well, my son Jordan has classical music playing in his car all the time. All the time. it's his go-to. And so his little girls now are listening to this music every time they get in the car. And I just thought, gosh, of all the music genres that he could choose, he has it programmed to classical music in his car all the time. And I asked him one day, why, out of all the different, music that everyone has chosen, why did you choose classical music? And he said, because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel at peace and calm. And no matter what else is going on, it just makes me feel good. And I was like, that's pretty good. I like that. I like that a lot.
Well, that is a testament to what we do in our home really does have rippling effects in their life when sometimes we don't think it does. And there you have an example of that. And, with Alexa, do we all have Alexas in our home now? We can just play that classical nonstop all through the night. I wake up and the classical's still going. So does anyone else have an experience with how music has helped kind of lift spirit in the home during challenging times?
I know that when I brought my babies home when they were very little, the only way I could get them to sleep or to calm down was through classical music. And if you've read Beethoven's story, he firmly believes that he was inspired of God to bring about the music that he wrote. And I think that would be true of Handel, especially with Handel's Messiah, how he wrote it, the whole cantata within 26 days, and then having it played before the king, and the king stands at the Hallelujah chorus. And that's how we have that tradition now of standing when that plays, recognizing God. And my son, likewise, he's in university, and he plays classical music for his studies. It helps him to think clear, to open up those brain waves to memorize and be calm and to clarify his thoughts. So there's a powerful notion with classical music that we're not taking advantage of as much as I believe we should. And of course, we are a family of musicals. We put on all of our musicals. We sing at the top of our lungs. We sing when we're happy. We sing when we're sad. We dance. I told my boys that a way to a woman's heart is to dance with them. So I've taught my boys to dance in the kitchen. And, it's through those bonding moments that are so incredibly important, and they remember it and they'll trickle it down to their children.
I know there's some really great musicals out there that can really inspire our kids, and musicals are something that I always loved. Of course, the Von Trapps, that was a great musical. But my husband introduced us to, loves classical movies, and he introduced us to Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. And when my daughter Amber was, I guess, 3-4 years old, we started watching it. And you know how your little kids, when you put on Nemo or whatever, they want to watch Nemo like 500,000 times. She wanted to watch Seven Brides for Seven Brothers 500,000 times. I mean, every single day. Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. And when you get done watching it, can I watch it again? And you're like, oh my gosh. And it's still one of her, she's like 23 now, and it's still one of her favorite movies. And it's got everything. It's got the dancing, the music, the good messages. I mean, and comedy. So great musicals are great ways to bring that into your family.
Well, and Annie, get your gun. It reminds me, my 12-year-old, he started singing "Anything You Can Do, I Can Do Better." Mm-hmm. And it's that competition of spirit and fun that they bring into the home that they remember. And so I think they're great.
Well, they say happy children, happy grandchildren sing. So we want to foster love of these great, songs with our children. So let's pull out some of those classics. This would be the time. Always in our little family devotional in the morning when we'd read a little scripture and have a little devotion and teach, some stories of America. we would always sing a hymn before we would pray. So I just have this stack of little church hymn books, and we just open them up, and we'd sing the song, and we'd sing the great, during Mother July, we'd sing patriotic songs. And so you don't even have to be a good singer, I'm not a particularly good singer, but we just sing away. We do the best we can. And there's something about the spirit of a song that it opens the heart, it just allows it to be receptive to the spirit, to learn more, to feel the joy of God. And so get some songbooks, start singing, Mom. It doesn't even matter if you can't hold a tune. That's not even the point. So let's turn the page to 142. Talks about Viktor Frankl. Has anyone read his book, Man's Search for Meaning?
Long time ago.
Yeah. So I'm like, I've got to read that book again. But here he was a Jewish neurologist and psychiatrist. He spent 3 to 4 years in different concentration camps. And he observed the behavior of those in the camps, and he witnessed how differently inmates reacted and responded to their brutal surroundings. And Frankl, through his own experience and discovery, found that it wasn't pleasure, but purpose that gave meaning to life. Men who lived and suffered in the very same conditions would either give up and succumb to their worst selves, or on rare occasions, they would rise above their surroundings. And he realized it was something in the heart, something more powerful than brutality and the dire nature of their surroundings, a sense of peace within the storm. So he said those that weathered the storm could find beauty in the simplest things. And the book goes on to talk about this. And then at the top of page 143, he says, then this is the ultimate depth and definition of freedom. It is not the circumstances without, but the determination within that ultimately defines who we are and the kind of person we will be. It is our freedom to choose, not necessarily our specific conditions and environment, but how we will meet them. No one can take that away from us. And how applicable this message is for our children today if we were to read this book to them and to let them know that regardless of the circumstances that they see in the world, they have the freedom to choose how they're going to respond and how they're going to contribute. So let's turn the page to the very last. Let's turn the page to page 143, and it talks about this whole article. Kimberly wrote it. It's always such fun. I just hack away and just par down this beautiful article that Kimberly wrote. Please read the whole article. But for the sake of time, I just have to give you snippets. But at the top of page 141, it says, beauty becomes not just what we see outside, but what it is actually in our hearts. It becomes our inner compass, who we are. Beauty in music, art, and nature penetrates our very soul when we have the spirit of gratitude. We see things differently. We face things differently. And at the very bottom, it says, we can reach that place where we can find beauty in everything, no matter how hard the world tries to hide it. We will be filled with profound gratitude. When we reach that place, we will have reached the pinnacle of self-governance, and we will at last comprehend the true depth and nature of freedom. So before the pandemic, I think probably we took for granted a lot of the loveliness in our life, the freedoms that we had. What are some of the small things that you've discovered now during this pandemic time when so much is shut down that has helped capture the spirit of gratitude or sunshine in your life? What are some of the small things now that life has really been pared down that you're doing, that you're helping your children do to capture the sunshine in their life instead of just being focused on the negative right now?
I just want to jump in and I'm sorry, I'll just be real quick. It's not specific. I mean, there were a lot of things from the pandemic, but I just, from my own experience just recently, I have to say that I've had to go back and read a lot of this. It was a very difficult time after my accident. There's a part in this article where Dostoevsky, who was someone who was also suffered greatly, he said, there is only one thing that I dread, not to be worthy of my sufferings. And people talk about, enduring a lot. And after my accident, it was a very challenging time because of COVID, I couldn't have anyone in the emergency room with me. I was not in a position to make good decisions on my medical care. I made a lot of bad mistakes, and the only reason why they admitted me is because I kept passing out every time they tried to let me go home, and I kept saying, just let me go home. I shouldn't have gone home. I needed to be admitted. I needed surgery. And so I finally get to my room, and they're going to do surgery the next day. I'm literally holding my shoulder together. It's shattered, and I'm holding it together as I'm, trying to get into the room and everything. And the whole entire time, I just kept telling myself, why did you do this? Why did you get on that ATV? Why would you do that? And I was just literally just beating myself to death, going, you are responsible for things. People are counting on you, and you put yourself in a position to not be there when they needed you. And I literally was just torturing myself. And finally, at one point in time, I just called to the Lord, and I said, please just help me get through this night. I was so stressed and scared and vulnerable. And the next day I had the surgery. And after the surgery, my husband called me, and he said, I just want you to know that we witnessed a miracle. And I didn't understand. Well, my oldest son had the GoPro going during the whole entire thing, because, hey, Mom's riding an ATV. Look how cool that is. So they got the whole entire accident on camera. And my husband said, I've never seen anything like this. It's literally like the hand of God lifted that ATV over you. It should have landed on me, and I literally could be dead or paralyzed or numerous other things. From that moment forward, I was like, wait a second. I just need to be grateful. I have been from that moment so incredibly grateful and humbled that there is a God in heaven, and that he cared enough about me to put his hand down there and it literally just went over and landed on its wheels on the other side of me. And I mean, I was pretty banged up and bruised, but after that I was like, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful I'm alive. I'm grateful that I have all my limbs about me. And I'm in, you can't see me wincing. I'm a little pain all the time. But I feel like when we have these things happen to us, whether it's COVID or the accident or whatever it is, if we can look at the blessings that we have, and I think it helps us to do an introspective look at where we are, what we have, and where we want to go. And I'm even more humble and impassioned by what we're doing than I was before, because I realized just he's there. No matter what's going on with COVID or anything else, God is there, and he is going to watch over us. And if we rely on him, he will fight our battles. And the environment that we're creating, the things that we're doing in our homes and in our sphere of influence, they are making a difference. And I realize that now more than ever. So you are looking at someone who is way more grateful and way more humble, when I already was very grateful before, because of the experience. And I hope that I will continue to become an even better person from the trials that come our way. But we can shore each other up, and we can support each other no matter what comes. And it was just a really good lesson for me.
Okay, let me interject here. I am Kimberly's assistant, and I have forbidden her to get on anything motorized ever, because she put a lot of fear in my heart. I'll tell you that. I trying to fill somebody's shoes when your feet just don't fit is really hard. So I know I'm very grateful and blessed that Kimberly is here. I don't know where Moms for America would be without her. So I'm, for my own selfish needs, but the organization as well. Kimberly, we're putting out the August magazine this month, and Kimberly has written a beautiful story that I think is just perfect for this, about how she just dismissed beauty for a long time, thinking that, it's just really not that important. And I would love for Kimberly to tell that story, because I think it's very inspiring. And I know she knows what I'm talking about.
It's like the Kimberly show. Okay, so for years, my husband wanted to see the Grand Canyon. And for, gosh, it's probably about 14, 15 years, we went back and forth from the East Coast to the West Coast visiting family, and kept passing that, what I kept calling the dumb crack in the desert. Who cares? It's just a dumb crack in the desert. You go look at it, check it off your bucket list, say you've been there, who cares? And every year we would go through, he'd say, let's stop at the Grand Canyon. I'm like, why? It's just a crack in the desert. And so when we were moving back from Hawaii, we were going to go and visit my son, who lived in Phoenix at the time, and he's like, can we go see the Grand Canyon? I'm like, fine, we'll go see the crack in the desert. And so we planned our whole entire trip, and we got there just before sunset. And I want to go in and get all settled in the hotel, and my husband's like, no, we need to drive straight to the Grand Canyon. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And all the kids were so excited. So I relentlessly gave in, put on my happy face, and said, fine, we'll go look at the crack in the desert. Mm-hmm. So we go out there, and we're walking through this path where there's brush and everything around there. And as you go through the path, you don't realize exactly where you are, but the path suddenly opens up, and there's the Grand Canyon. Mm. Sorry. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The sun was coming over and coloring all of these rocks and these beautiful formations and everything, and I was just absolutely awestruck. And I just couldn't believe it. All those years I kept saying, it's just a crack in the desert, who cares? Mm-hmm. And the beauty that I was missing. Mm-hmm. On the way back to the car through the path, there was a little sign that said sunset 6:10, and I grabbed my husband's hand and I said, I want to come back. I want to be here. And he's like, he just smiled, and he's like, okay. So when we were going to the Grand Canyon that night, my husband was like going as fast, and the kids were skipping through, and I'm just like meandering, Well, the next morning, I was the one that was ahead of everybody, and I'm rushing them. Let's get up. We gotta go. We gotta make the 6:10. And I wanted to make sure we're gonna be at 6 o'clock, so we caught the 6:10. And we were there, sitting there on the rock as that sun just came up over the rise, and wow, we just took a lot of pictures, but it was like just sitting there and truly feeling the majesty of God's hand. Like it was, you almost felt like you were in God's presence. Like he was there, and it was breathtaking. For years, I thought it was just a rock, just a crack in the desert, bunch of rocks. And now I realize the majesty that it is. And so if you have any opportunity to just sit and just, especially now when everything's so noisy and so angry, just go and sit and just breathe in and realize how incredible this world is that God created for us, and that he is everywhere.
You know what, Kimberly, you're not the only person that thinks it's just a crack in the desert, because I've been trying to get my husband to go too, and that's exactly how he feels. I'm like, no, it's different. And, a couple years ago, I took my girls to Colorado, and Brielle had never left Texas before. So she's, super excited. And I'm like, I want to go to the Broadmoor Hotel. I want to have the Sunday brunch. And, when I had lived in Colorado Springs for a long time, and I have a huge appreciation for the mountains. So Sunday, we're all dressed up in our finest to go have this fancy brunch, and we get on the escalator to go up the stairs to have the meal. And when you get to the top of the stairs, you see the most beautiful thing ever. It's all glass, so you can see outside, and you see the most majestic view of the mountains that you're ever going to see. And it literally takes your breath away, and so I'm going to have my husband read your story, Kimberly, because I want him to go experience that too. Because if you haven't seen that and experienced it, you're like, oh yeah, whatever. But I need him to go have that moving experience too. Because I know going up that escalator and seeing that, it's like life-changing. It truly is, because you feel that, you see the majesty of God's hand and what he's created. And it's a beautiful thing when you take the time to stop and look and admire what's around you.
if I may interject really quick, Jolene, I know you want to wrap up, but there's an author, he was an essayist, his name is William George Jordan, and in one of his books about being calm, he talks about the heron. If you talk about, you know, the heron, and the greatest predator that the heron had is the eagle. And, you know, so this is a metaphor. You know, if you surround yourself with beauty and you're calm, the heron, when it's being attacked by the eagle, just stands still. And he sticks his beak out. And he watches the eagle. As the eagle, his talons are out, he's coming directly at him with ferocity, right? But the heron just stands still and is calm. And there's beauty, and there's peace around him. And his beak is the one that is going to protect him, right? But if you surround yourself with beauty, as the wind and the torrents and the contention is swirling around your home, if you have that beauty within your home, or if you've seen the Grand Canyon, which I have, and you've seen the Rocky Mountains, and I have on both sides. I grew up in Colorado as well. And I've been to that hotel. You know, if you've seen this majestic world and had the opportunity to travel, to see the lands, even just traveling by car. I love traveling by car. You see the majesty that God has created, in the beauty and the diversity. In Utah, you have robins. In Texas, you have cardinals. Right. I love the cardinals here. They're in the blue jays. You know, I never thought I'd get to see them. You know, so the diversity, just to be still is such a blessing, and it's powerful. Mm-hmm. It's powerful. If you having that knowledge of, I am centered with Christ, you know, and the beauty around me that the Lord has provided, the torrents can't knock you down. And that's the story of the heron. The heron can't be knocked down because he stands still. He knows his surroundings. He's watching, right? And that's what we do. We stand still. We allow only beauty to come, and we're watching, right? That's so.
I love moms, what you have shared with us today. And I think the important thing as mothers and grandmothers is that we help our children see the hand of God in that vista. My mom always used to say, how can there be an atheist? Look at that sunrise. You know, she was always saying, how could you possibly not believe in God? Just look at the beauty of this. So she tuned our eyes in when we might not have been focused on these kind of things. And even Kimberly, with your accident, and maybe it was your husband that opened the eyes of the children as they watched that. But you were able to take something horrific like an accident and help them to see the beauty of God just gently sparing you from something that could have been so much worse. And it's those ideas and it's those lessons that they will take as they move out into this harsh and perilous and scary world, you know, of a mother helping them to see things that they might not have otherwise seen. So as we turn to the page on 156, I don't know if any of you have seen that movie, The Birdman of Alcatraz, that came out like 1962, 50 years ago. But, this hardened criminal and how miserable he was. And then a little bird flies into his cell and he recuperates it. And then all kind of birds come into his cell and he builds this aviary and he becomes this expert on birds' diseases and how to heal. And it really changes his life. The changes in the Birdman began when a visit from a small bird ignited a small spark of gratitude. This feeling opened the door for a sense of purpose to swell within his heart and displace the elements of darkness. What a wonderful movie you could watch with your children about having purpose. Discovery of a purpose is like a dose of sunshine that propels men and women forward to new heights of achievement. When we are deeply involved in a positive purpose, our souls and even our bodies, it seems, resonate with the power and energy of God. And, you know, this is a question that we could ask ourselves, ask our children. How does a cause help us capture sunshine? What gives you purpose when you wake up each day? What is the reason for you in this world of capturing, you know, what is the reason you get up? What makes you hopeful? And so that would be a discussion worthy to have with our children. This would be something you could watch with them. So as we wrap up on the next page, 147, it talks about Victor Hugo, who is, you know, the famous French novelist and writer. He wrote Hunchback of Notre Dame, Les Mis, Cromwell. And, you know, a lot of his impetus for his writings came because of God. Isn't it interesting? He said, God is behind everything in Les Mis. And he has some wonderful quotes down below on page 147. And I love how he says that quote, courage for the great sorrows of life and patience for the small ones. And when you have laboriously accomplished your daily tasks, isn't that how we feel? Like each night we lay our heads down, go to sleep in peace. God is awake. Isn't that beautiful? After we've done all that we can, because we know there is a God in heaven, just give it to God. Go to sleep in peace. God is awake. So, you know, you hear me talk about, out of my 5 kids, one boy is in the NBA. He's a basketball player, and he's down in Orlando, Florida right now in that NBA bubble, trying to keep all the players contained. And the first game will be in a few days on July 30th, and every player has wanted to make a political statement. And on the back of their jersey, every player has been able to choose what they wanted. And me, in fear and trepidation, because at 22 now, he's been in the NBA a few years, I can't exactly tell him what to do anymore like I could a few years ago. And I thought, what in the world is he going to put on the back of his jersey? Because some are putting, I can't breathe, Black Lives Matters, anti-racist, vote, freedom. And Frankie said to me the other day, Mom, I'm going to put peace. And I thought, well, okay, out of all the things, and some of them are going to be real doozers on the back of their jerseys. And I thought, he doesn't even realize that peace is most closely associated with God. How can you really have peace in life unless there is a presence of God in your life? It's a word that connotates looking up. How do we find this internal feeling of peace? Oftentimes is associated with our relationship with the divine. And so I was, and really, you know, after all that we can do in the world today is, you know, we get so churned with by what we're seeing and the deception and the censorship. It is, I think, our beauty, our ability to find beauty in things of God that might be the thing that will carry us through. And so I was kind of shocked and pleasantly happy with what he wants to put on the back of his jersey. So as we close up our little lesson today, if we just turn to the last page of page 148 and 149 of our Cottage Meeting Manual, our President Lincoln in the middle of page 149 says the Bible is simply the greatest gift God has given to mankind. How people throughout history have paid a dear price to be able to have access to it, to read it, and oftentimes it just sits unopened in too many homes today. But also consider as well the great worth of a mind and heart stocked full of not only the Word of God, but of art and melodies of beautiful inspirational music and great words of literature. And just know we have access to things that only royalty had access to in years past. A well-stocked mind and heart is equipped to find hope in the direst of circumstances. Marie Antoinette said, what a resource amid the casualties of life is a well-cultivated mind. One can then be one own's companion and find society in one's own thoughts. With Moms for America, The whole premise is that liberty begins at home, and mothers and grandmothers, you will be the best teachers. You are the most qualified to teach your children and your grandchildren these things. And as we come together and we learn these principles and ideas ourselves, the most natural thing in the world is to go back home and to teach our children and our grandchildren. And then you just sit back and you just watch how God uses them and this information you're learning in your life and in their life. And that's really the beauty of these cottage meetings and the beauty of what we talked about today. Indeed, beauty does sweeten life, and it makes even the common life bright. And it helps get us through the pain and the heartache and the trials and the loneliness and suffering that we will feel throughout this life and this very day in our country and nation. It's the mothers, it's the grandmamas who help your children and your grandchildren see what most of the world can't see. And as you cover your walls with beautiful, inspiring art, and you make available beautiful music and literature, you will nurture within them a desire for the love of beauty in all of its expressions. And they will feel how it can truly be restorative power in their life to go out and to do good and to preserve and perpetuate what was given to us all these many years ago by our great founding fathers and mothers. So that is our lesson today. Next week, it's a great lesson, lesson number 9, a time to sow, where we will talk about that magical dinner hour. Is there even such thing as a dinner hour anymore? We're going to talk about the importance of the dinner hour and time management ideas and the value of quality family time. So unless anyone has anything more to say, we will sign off, and we'll see you next week, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time each Wednesday.